What is going on, guys, and welcome back to another one of the videos. Today I thought we were going to look at something that is related to the topic which we have just discussed in the last video, which is forces and torque. And yeah, this is actually going to be my first real explanation video of how things work. And yeah, today's topic is transmissions. So maybe to think a little bit, what is a transmission, right? What does it do? I just wanted to make a video about this to clarify, because it actually is kind of good doing it now, because it has to do with forces and torque and even understanding how everyday cars work, right? Cars, motorcycles, everything that does not have a fixed gear ratio works with transmissions, right? So yeah, let's have a look. So there is one thing that I want you guys to know, right? And I already wrote down this formula before, right? We have one formula that basically already tells us how this works, right? You have P is M times omega, okay? So now some of you guys already know that let's just first, of course, as we always do, right? Let's first check the units. So we have, here we have watt, right? And you guys might know that watt is just the same as joules per second. And this is the same as 1 joule is also 1 Newton meter. So you also have Newton meters per second, right? So this is just all the same for the P. And now if we have a look at M times omega, this is just the same as M is, of course, M is F times A, right? So I'm just going to put that here. M is equal to F times, or some length, of course. So we have Newton times meter. And then we also have the omega, which is just the same as times, because we have a times here, so times it's actually 1/second, right? So that actually is perfect, because if you multiply these three together, you of course get watt. So this lines up very nicely, okay? I'm just gonna erase this because this is not of today's topic, but just for you guys to see how this formula, why this formula exists. Okay, so let's have a look now. Imagine you're driving your car. Okay, this is the situation. How I'm going to explain this. Imagine you're driving your car and you're at a red light. Okay, and you hold on the clutch and you shift into first gear, right? People that don't know anything about cars just shift it to first, and they're like, okay, well, I'm at first. When I get going, then I'm 20, 30, 40. Okay, 40 is kind of, let's just say 25 km/h. I shift into second. And then you through the gears, up through the gears, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. Of course, when you have an automatic, you don't have to shift. But they all work on the same principle, right? And that is this formula. So, one important thing to understand is we have one variable here that is constant, which means that the variable never changes, right? So, assuming that we are always in the same total position, because of course it makes a difference how much performance you're asking from the car, right? When you're full throttle, of course you have more performance available, so the P increases, right? But let's say that all of the time you are at half throttle, okay? So your throttle is at 50%. So, and now further with the example. You stop at a red light and you get going, right? So you realize that you get going and you feel, okay, I can get going fast, right? First and second gear, okay, I'm accelerating fast, and then I accelerate more slowly and more slowly and more slowly, right? Until I reach some speed that is set to my 50 position throttle at, I don't know, 5th or 4th gear, whatever. So yeah, this is actually where we actually investigate this. So let's say that we have to do one thing. We have to set P is equal to constant. Okay? So this is gonna be our first thing. Okay, so the engine gives out a constant amount of power, of performance available. Okay, and remember, performance is just P. I'm actually going to define all of these things here. P is just the same as V over T. What does this mean? Work over time. The amount of work that you do in a certain amount of time, right? And of course, if you do more work in less time, you have a bigger performance. And if you do less work in more time, of course, your performance decreases, right? So this is the rate of work, right? I like to call this the rate of work. So I'm actually right here, rate of work, okay? Of doing work, I should say. Great. So this is the rate of doing work. Okay, you have M, I've already explained that in my past videos, and omega. This is one thing that we have not looked at yet, right? Omega, it consists of three things. 2, pi, and then n. So you have 2 pi's, makes sense, right? 2 times pi, and then times n. Now n is the revolutions per second in this case, or revolutions per minute over 60, okay? So always use the SI units, okay? And this is our angular velocity. Now, why do we call it angular velocity specifically? Well, obviously 2 pi, right? A circle, remember guys, I've already also made a video about this, covering this topic. 2 pi basically describes a whole circle. And that is why that is the angular velocity. There are some other things about omega and alpha, which I'm gonna get into, but not yet. Okay, so now that we've defined these things, of course, M is just the torque. That's, I think, pretty clear. I've defined that in my past videos. Good. And now we actually have a look at what is happening. So, you're in first gear and you're driving away. What is happening? You have P is constant, right? So P never changes, right? So you have P is M times omega. And what happens is, because because your wheels are turning slowly, right? So you're just getting going. You're driving, I don't know, 10, 20, 30. Now, of course, you can also calculate how fast your wheels are turning. Maybe we'll do that in the next video, okay? But let's just do this like this, okay? So omega is low, but because this is constant, right? This never changes. Throttle at 50% never changes, right? So you get going, you release slowly, you know, and then you clutch in, and then second gear, 50% throttle again. Clutch in, 50% throttle again, of course, third gear and so on and so forth. But you guys see that in first gear, so I'm gonna actually write here, first gear, you have a high torque, but low revolutions per minute, right? Because this is just proportional to n. Okay, so we can basically say that this is n, right? But it's not actually n. It's a factor of 2 pi, which is actually a factor of like 6.2. So that's actually quite a big factor. Okay, so let's now go further. Okay, second gear. So P is higher or lower now? Still constant, of course, because we are still holding the throttle at 50%. Now you might think that it has changed, but that is not the case. Our engine produces the same amount of power for the same amount of gas position. Okay, second gear. So you have now again M times omega, and let's do the same thing. Okay, let's just assume we have 5 gears. Okay, so we have 3, 4, and 5. So what happens now? Well, of course, you have a smaller arrow, right? Because you're going faster, okay? But still, you have more torque relative to your angular velocity, okay? And we maybe just continue now, okay? So I'm gonna just make an equal here, and now if you put these two into relation, right? This is not 1-to-1, okay? But this is just to showcase what it actually is doing, okay? So now I'm gonna say that these are about the same, okay? Because you can see the arrow has gotten smaller. The arrow is getting smaller here, and now they're about the same, right? So I'm just not gonna put an arrow there. And then fourth gear, what is happening is actually we're doing this, applying the same logic. So M is actually now getting smaller. and omega is getting larger. And now the same thing for fifth gear. You have M is getting smaller, but a lot smaller, and omega is getting a lot larger, right? So you have here, right, so I kind of just named these by when you would use these, right? So you have acceleration from 0 is basically when we have the biggest torque, but the lowest angular velocity. Then, of course, third gear is about balance, right? We have some speed, but we have also some power left. And then on the highway, now the best way to maybe think about this is you're not to think about this instead of only think about it this way is when you drive on the highway, right? Your wheels are turning fast, and that means that if you floor it on the highway, you're not gonna, in the same amount of time, right? Because what is acceleration? Let's maybe look at another technical thing here. I'm gonna actually do it up here. What is acceleration actually? So A, right? A has the unit of meters per second squared. What is that actually? Well, acceleration is the rate of change in velocity over the change in time. Okay. This is the definition of the acceleration. So, if we now floor it on the highway, right, we do get some kind of acceleration, but it's going to be smaller than the acceleration that we would get when we're in first gear, and that is exactly because of this. Because the M, the torque, actually accelerates for us, right? The torque is that accelerates our wheels, right? And so in first gear, if we turn this around, this A is a lot bigger because we have more torque to play with, right? But we're not going that fast. That's why we can even accelerate more, because we are not going that fast. And this is the formula for our vehicle's performance. Okay, so I rearranged this a little bit and also put down some new stuff. So what do we have here? So first of all, this are all of the definitions for our gear ratio, right? So this I here is our gear ratio. What does that mean? We have gear ratio is defined as omega in over omega out, or the same as n in over n out, right? Because that's just this, okay? Or we have z out over z in. What does z out mean? Z out is the number of teeth on our gear itself, right? So we have a gear which looks something like this, and z out over z in is just the number of teeth that you have on your gears, where this actually comes from, right? So it's the same as this, d out over d in. Your gears, the actual gears themselves, right? The gears that go like this, they have to have different teeth, or a bit further thought maybe, they have to have different diameters or radiuses to even make it work that they have different teeth. That is that comes from a formula that I'm not gonna discuss right now, but just know that to have anything some kind of gear ratio, you have to have a different amount of teeth, and therefore a different amount of diameters, or swapped around, right? Hey guys, it's me from post-production. I actually realized that I did not explain that very nicely, what in and out actually means. So when you have in and out, that is just the way that we describe things that come from the engine, right, or to the wheels. So a way to think of this is the letters that have in their description. That means that they have to be turning at the speed of the engine, okay? And the gears that have out, or D out, or Z out, or whatever, are just the gears that are going out to our wheels. So in is everything that is driven by the engine, and then out are the gears after the ratio that are going out to our wheels. Great. And now let's have a look at what this is, okay? So this is actually from what I remember, some of the gear ratios on the transmission that I had to calculate and draw in school, right? So you have 3.78 and then 2.62, 1.95, 1.33, and 0.97. So what does this actually mean? Well, this just means that, for example, let's just take, for example, fifth gear, right? This is close to 1. It means that the engine's rotation speed is about the same as the speed on the wheels, right? It's not really the truth because there is a differential in between, which has about a gear ratio of 3.7 or 3.5. But if there were no differentials, the wheels would be turning with about the same speed as our engine is turning, right? This is basically what this means. And here, as you guys can see, this just means if this is 3.78, that means that W in must be 3.78 times W out. Sorry, not W, it's omega actually. And what does this actually mean? Well, we have a slower, right? Because this has to be 3.78 times bigger. That means this has to be 3.78 times smaller, okay? So we have a smaller rotation speed at our wheels, which by this formula means that we have to have a way bigger torque at our wheels, which means we can accelerate faster in a certain amount of time. So guys, thank you very much for watching. I will wrap this up, but maybe before I do, just a little bit of a quick summary as to what really a transmission is, right? A transmission is a device with gears inside that transfers torque, right? First of all, that transfers torque, but it also puts torque and angular speed into relation, right? As we've said, it's basically just something that takes M and omega and makes one bigger and one slower, and then otherwise it makes one slower and one bigger, right? So that's what a transmission does, and transmissions are very important things. Yes, you have this in cars, you have this in motorcycles, you have this in everything that you use for transportation, right? Even electric cars have transmissions for higher speeds. You guys maybe do not know that. Yeah, I think this is a very important thing to know, and you do not have to remember all of this, but maybe just think that this is the formula after which these transmissions work, and that is the reason also why you accelerate slower on the highway, why you can accelerate faster when you're driving away from a light, from a traffic stop, or not a traffic stop, from a light, because your torque is higher and your angular velocity is lower, and of course a constant performance P. Then of course when your torque is higher, you can have a bigger change in velocity over the same time, right? This is basically just this formula right here. And when your torque is lower, you have a lower change of velocity in the same amount of time, resulting in a lower acceleration from your car. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one. See you in the next one. Goodbye.